welcome. Greetings to our viewers via Zoom. I see we have a dozen or more people connected already. Welcome to this, our third installment of the CDO seminar series presented by Leap Beyond in partnership with Nordic AI. In this series, we'll be choosing from a list of burning topics about data in 2020 and the pivotal role data currently plays in society. Today, we turn our minds to robust data applications for uncertain times, which I know we can all have a feeling about after 2020. Each seminar, we invite a new panel of 4 C-level experts from startups and established global entities to ask and answer the tough questions. We have some questions to get things started. However, this is also interactive. If you're joining from Zoom, you'll notice the Q&A tab where you can ask and vote on questions for our panel today. Please do use it. Throw your questions in early to make sure we have time to ask them. And our fearless backstage team here will also be helping out in the chat, where we also invite you to discuss the topics of the day. If you're using the chat, please make sure you set yourself to all participants and panelists so everyone can see the discussion. My name's Rob. I'll be the moderator for the session today. Today's topic, robust data applications for uncertain times. Robustness is a topic that I myself have been prioritizing and harking on about since the robustness challenge presented by the year 2000. And here we stand almost ready to wave goodbye to 2020, a year where almost every corner of the world and every sector of commerce and trade has been disrupted by the pandemic. For some industries, however, disruption is simply the name of the game. The disruption has forced some companies into rapid innovation, and in others has completely stalled innovation. As these organizations deal with disruption, which approaches and techniques at play here should also carry over into the world of healthcare. So, warm welcome with thanks to our panelists. As usual, I'm joined by 4 panelists that you see around me. I'll just very quickly do the name drops. Please wave when you hear me mention you. Representing the data-driven startups and with a particular passion and experience in robust data systems and sustainable repeatable AI, Roey Mechrez of Beyond Minds. With a history across retail and FMCG in multiple directorial positions, and now asking the question, isn't it time healthcare learned from retail? Gemma Schneemann.
Hey guys.
Representing logistics, shipping, and international trade, working with multiple shipping companies globally as an advisor, Nicolas Treu, Director of Consultancy at Maersk Broker Advisory.
Hi, everyone.
And finally, working with complex data and legacy systems, building tailored, fit-for-purpose and robust data systems for multiple industries. Welcome Richard Barter, CEO of Altviz.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome one and all. So, straight into the questions. First, easy question. Please tell us a little about yourself and your involvement with robust data systems. I'd like to start with Richie.
Thanks, Rob. So, yeah, as you mentioned, I'm a CEO and founder of a company called Altviz, based here in the UK with offices in Ireland as well. But we have a pan-European presence. We're all about intelligent automation, which is using data and systems to help automate and scale complex processes. We do that for companies typically on top of legacy investments they've made in core infrastructure. We have a software platform that we license to our customers, and that allows them to access both structured and unstructured sets of data within their organizations, analyze it using complex AI models, and then action on the top of that to drive automation and scale the business processes. And so a lot of the work we do tends to touch mission critical core processes within either operations of large CPGs, the finance function of one of the largest petrol distributors in the UK, or even helping an e-commerce giant like eBay to deliver performance. So we've always had a robustness first mentality, an ability to build systems that will scale with the size of the data in the organization, that will act with the intensity and the speed that those systems require, and that use best in breed of a lot of the cloud technologies that are available in microservices, containerization, and other techniques, which allows us to horizontally scale and deal with lumps of effort that come through. So it's a topic close to our heart as a business, and I think our longest standing customer is eBay, and we've had sensitive eBay data on our servers for many years now, and we've had to put in place all of the additional security and robustness procedures that come with that as well. So it's core to how we engage and give our customers comfort.
Thanks, Richie. Very interesting. Before I ask you some more questions about that, let's stay on the startup side and throw it over to Roey.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to this panel, Rob. So I'm Roey. I'm Beyond Minds CTO and co-founder. Beyond Minds is headquartered in Israel with offices in London and New York. We're 70 plus people, large AI research team, where our focus is AI as a service. We have been developed a unique platform that is allow us to enable companies to bring complex AI solutions to production with production grade capabilities in NLP, computer vision, and speech. Our focus is global 2,000 companies in the insurance, financial services, and manufacturing sectors, with use cases from fraud detection, anti-money laundering, claim automation, underwriting, defect detection, and predictive maintenance. As an example, when we worked with companies like Microsoft, Samsung, KPMG, and 25 others.
Thanks, Roey. Very inspiring. Christian, tell us about the world of shipping.
Thank you very much for inviting me here. I really feel privileged because to me, being here is actually sort of a new path in my career. I've worked at IBM before for a number of years. For the last 8 years, I've been with Maersk in a subsidiary called Maersk Broker, where we focus on broking stuff, which means buying and selling of assets primarily. I, however, sit in our advisory and consultancy department and heading that up for the consultancy part. And as sort of the world evolves and the shipping evolves, it also means that we need to rethink our current value proposition, so to speak. So in that process, we a couple of years ago started to reviewing that based on some strategy work, and we found out that we need to do sort of a smaller shift from being a service provider into being more like a product owning company, which provide our clients with a product. So in that process, we have invented a tool that will help our clients be able to predict the future and the future earnings for their assets. So really focusing on the asset industry. So I must say, even though we're 2 years down the line, to me there are still terminology that I need to learn. There are still areas of this robustness that I need to be better at. So, but we are learning every day, and that was a little bit about me.
Thanks, Christian. Thanks for joining us. And finally, but last but by no means least, Gemma.
Hi, Rob. Thanks for the invitation for today. Well, my name is Gemma Schneemann. I have a background in food service and in retail. I've been a marketing director at various companies, and my job is to create new value propositions and to create customer insights and influence behavior based on insights and data. So I have been working with, let's say from the business side, with insights and data for more than 20 years. And I think on this panel, I kind of represent the last part, kind of, let's say, the user part, the marketing part, how to get insights and data and create results and outcomes for a company.
Thanks, Gemma. And from your viewpoints, Gemma, in FMCG and Christian in shipping, 2020 has been a particularly challenging year across the board. But starting with Gemma, tell me, what does robustness mean to you? What does robustness mean to retail, and what's it been like weathering this storm of 2020?
Well, robustness, it entails a lot. In retail, I think the most boring answer is the data system robustness is especially important for the checkout process. And retail is defined by a lot of data. So we have a high amount of users, we have a high user frequency, which is more than once per day. We have a high amount of items in a basket, and if you combine that all together, you get truckloads of data and volumes. And the most important thing in robustness is to keep that going and to be able to check out. And that's kind of, it sounds rather silly, but it is quite essential, especially in retail. I was kind of, maybe a nice way to illustrate that is a couple of weeks back, it was Singles Day. And Singles Day is on the 11th of 11th, and then we celebrate the ones. So that's hence the date. And during Singles Day, Alibaba, which is, of course, the biggest commercial platform in Asia, they sold, during the first 30 minutes of this Singles Day, they had a 48 billion euro sales, and which is only the sales in 1/2 an hour. If your checkout process does not work at that time, and then kind of everything stops in retail. So robustness within retail, it kind of depends on a lot of things, but let's say focus and priority one is to be able to check out. And well, the good thing is what I kind of discovered, if you look at those kind of numbers, 48 billion is kind of the GDP of a whole country. The GDP of Bolivia is as much as the first 30 minutes on Singles Day. Well, that's kind of in size and in volumes quite astonishing. And I think it's very easy to get attracted to make things too complicated with data and data robustness, kind of, especially when you have a lot of data. And the trick is not to make it too complicated, not to want to be too smart, but to make it sizable and addressable, and therefore also practical. So I would say those are the biggest concerns for data robustness within retail.
What's 2020 been like, Gemma? It's been what was 2020 Singles Day like? I think there are a lot more singles than previous years.
Yeah, and Black Friday is coming up. So this Friday is Black Friday. So we will see similar volumes and amounts, even higher this coming Friday. So have a look out. And it's mostly online. So what is 2020 done in retail is that there's been a huge shift towards online. Everything that's digital is booming, except for food service, because of all the HoReCa gastronomy is being closed, of course. So that is really a big, huge blow for that sector. But what you see in retail is a huge shift. It was an omnichannel approach always, and the omnichannel players, they are winning, and 2020 has only encouraged that. So it's more and more online.
Thanks, Gemma. Now over to Christian. Shipping has a very, very unique place in the world, especially in such a disruptive time. A few weeks ago, we were chatting together about how just the life of someone in shipping is just disruption. Tell us a little bit about that, please, in shipping, and what does robustness actually mean in a world where everything is disruption?
Sure, thank you. But before I do that, Rob, I think what Gemma is saying here is really interesting. And actually, I do have a background in retail many years ago. And I think it's very right that the checkout phase is part and parcel. And that also goes for the shipping industry. I mean, we live off having a robust supply chain, making sure that we deliver the end products. So even though there are completely different industries, we are, of course, the shipping industry is very much benefiting from this COVID-19, as we see right now, especially or at least the container market is, because, as Gemma is rightfully saying, people are buying more. There's a shift towards more online activity. Which means that we're seeing rates and volumes for the container market being to same levels as we saw right before the financial crisis. So we are things are in that way have shifted, but again, world trade will always survive, and the shipping industry has a way of always sort of coming out on top. So, Rob, to your question, which was something about what does it mean for robustness in the industry, I think shipping has traditionally been a very traditional industry, and to some extent also it has been a simple and simplistic industry. What we are seeing now is more sophisticated clients asking for more sophisticated solutions, and in that process, it's important that we can cater for that. So for us, it's evident that we sort of that we think about that and secure that that we become better at understanding our clients' needs, and that we can sort of foresee the various scenarios, and the robustness here and or the modeling aspects of it is really crucial in that sense. I don't know whether that answered anything or just opened up for more questions.
It certainly did. Now, I'm always intrigued by the world of shipping, where any kind of socio-political unrest anywhere in the world has this network effect to everything that happens everywhere else. It's this really complex systems analysis part of things. Very intriguing area. Thanks very much, Christian. Roey, data, AI, robustness, 2020 is machine learning and AI actually helping us in 2020, or is it making things worse, Roey?
Yeah, I don't. Was for sure not, but I don't think it's a game changer quite yet. I think what we see in industry and across sectors that most AI application and use cases do not reach production. I think the statistics is 1 out of 10 reach profitability, and maybe 1 out of 8 reach production. So we're still not yet. There is a big gap that we see between ideas, great use cases, great opportunities, to the real life where AI can make the difference. But I think we're heading there. So we see more and more adoption across companies. From my experience in the last year around insurance and claim automation and underwriting automation, there is a huge use of AI that really gain value and fast and massive. Also in manufacturing, I think it's becoming very useful technology. Definitely under the COVID-19 environment, where it's hard to bring lots of labor and employees into factories. It's make a difference. So if you can reduce the labor-intensive work in different industries, it has huge potential. But the adoption is slower than needed to really reach this huge value.
Thanks, Roey. I think we'll come back to more questions on that, because I know I have a few burning ones. But first of all, let's go over to Richie. Richie, you mentioned robustness first. So what does that actually mean to you when you're designing and building a system? How do you bake in robustness from the beginning? And if you could also touch a little bit on the craziness of 2020, much appreciated.
Well, I think to pick up Roey's point, which is, I think, very well made, there are still an awful lot of use cases in the AI and machine learning space that don't ever make it to production. And I think if you think about robustness in the context of a successful use case, then it's a more holistic approach. So when we engage our customers, we actually start by talking to the business side of the organization. And we spend a lot of time understanding the process within which the technology will live, how variable that process is, the existing systems that they have, and the landscape in which an automation from our platform would exist. Because without that context and without understanding how much the processes will vary over time, the likelihood of success in the long term is much diminished. And only then do we start to engage the IT leadership within an organization to understand how we connect with the data sources, what their existing internal data science capabilities are, whether they need a leap beyond to come in and do a really high-end algorithm to support it, or whether, and on, and then security and deployment and so forth. And so what I often see with other technology companies is they jump into the how do we implement this in X because we're kind of a SaaS player or whatever. I think we've taken a more consultative approach, and by taking that more consultative approach and starting with the business side in the sales process, you actually end up with a more rounded solution that comes with a higher likelihood of success. That would be kind of our approach to this. And I think by doing that and by ensuring that there's alignment between, I was on a call this morning with a partner, and we're engaging with a large CPG, and there's, a conversation ongoing as to whether the IT department want to take a certain direction with a core piece of technology. The business side aren't sure if they want to take any new technology or just amend their processes. And then there's a large systems vendor underlying who wants them to upgrade to the next version. So there's all of that complexity happening in every business before you even think about what the AI application is going to do on top of all of that. And so again, I think robustness comes from alignment across all of those stakeholders, and then trying to have the flexibility in the system to evolve as the business itself evolves. I think reflecting on the second part of your question in terms of robustness in the chaos of 2020, I think, what have I seen? So we've had a front seat in some of the most interesting applications of data mining and data algorithmic processes around the COVID responses in certain countries. Again, that was where an automation platform was required to bring disparate sets of data together in a way that could drive better decision making around the crisis. I think that was an eye opener in terms of having to deal with governmental level of robustness for parts of that deployment. I think again, alignment is an issue at that kind of governmental type conversation as well. But I have seen a willingness to try and adopt data and the tools. I'll give you a great example from the UK. The government digital service many years ago, maybe in the last 10 years, set up a messaging framework that will allow them to contact individual members of society at scale. So they want to send you a text message, but they want to send 70 million people a text message. They're not standing up a new server and then standing up the messaging framework for that. They actually have a nationwide messaging system which is in place, sitting there ready to be used, and they were able to deploy this and keep whole swathes of the country up to date via text message. And there's a data-driven policy and a data-driven thinking that's in the background here, which are big investments up front that have to be made by countries that can be leveraged, but actually, often countries don't get the credit for that. And then much harder systems, that have had to be put in place in a lot shorter period of time shows, again, the complexity of dealing with that and the sensitivity. So, I think we've seen both the good and the bad of some of these topics through the course of 2020.
Certainly been a very interesting year. We actually have a question coming from the chat that I'd like to throw over to Roey, and that's, do you think there's a huge gap right now between academia and industries in terms of recent developments? Obviously, we're thinking very much in AI here, but also about robustness. I think there's a gap, but I'm not sure it's the way round that Manish thinks it is between academia and industry in terms of robustness. So how do we cope with this gap? What are we going to do in the future, Roey?
Yeah, so for sure there is a gap, a huge gap. And I think it's not about where innovation comes from, since most of development and recent ideas in AI comes from academia. You can say, if you really want to take it in advance, that we're in the fourth revolution, and this fourth revolution is about data and AI, and it's quite spread. There is no single invention that comes from a single source. An amazing number, by the way, is that 3% of all papers that are being published a year are about AI. That's a crazy number. Anyway, to the point, I think the missing gap between the missing piece that creates this gap between academia and industry is robustness, to the point. And the idea is that in research, in labs, what people are handling is single model, single problem. Let's build an object detection. Let's build a semantic segmentation. They collected a data set, very clean, neat, 1 million images if you want to take ImageNet, divided into 1,000 classes, perfect. But the reality is more classes, much less data, much more noise. If you want NLP examples, you have spell errors, you have grammar mistakes, you have slang. With an Indian-based insurance company that we're working with, they have English text saying and letters saying Hindi words. How can you handle that with classic language models? So that's the gap. And I think the shift and the mindset that need to transform is between AI model or models into AI systems that compose of different components like confidence estimation and out of distribution detection to govern and protect these models and achieve robustness, feedback loop, and how to work with human environment in order to improve over time, how to collect new data streams that are shifting in the environment, how to alert when there is a data drift in production, how to explain the models, how to push updates over time to keep these models alive. It's like shooting a moving target, AI in production. If you want to be robust, you need to adopt, you need to move, you need to shift, you need heavy maintenance, heavy management, heavy monitoring, complex environment, complex solution. Definitely in mission critical environment and sensitive use cases, which are less statistics. I think what we're seeing today is the early adopters in AI, many startups and technology companies, they use AI for cases where the difference between 80% accuracy and 95% accuracy is a big, is a small change, right? It's more statistical use. Think about, I don't know, an analyst that need to read 200 pages a day, and you have an AI to summarize that. If the accuracy is 85 or 80%, it's not critical. But if you're going into sensitive environment where each sample make a difference, I don't know, onboarding in financial services, right? You want to do face recognition to verify that the person that took a selfie when he's open a Monzo account is the same one in the document. You need 99% accuracy. And that's, of course, not valid or possible with AI models. And that's why you need AI systems to understand when this should pass to a human. What is the distribution that the model can work well? And different components that need to work with the model. That makes the story much more complex. Yeah, sorry. That makes the story much more complex, and it requires heavy lifting and investment in systems, which is complex for most companies.
It leads me into a very similar question that I'd like to hear your answers to, more on the kind of strategic side, which is like, okay, when people think about robustness, they think about, you know, the pyramids of Egypt, or the or giant stone monoliths, or things like that, things that, like, for centuries, giant blocks of something. But when we think about robustness in data systems, are we thinking about monoliths? Are we thinking about one giant monolith to serve all aspects of the business, or are we thinking about something else? And I'd first like to throw that over to Christian.
Thank you very much. I want to start again, sorry for that, but I think it's very interesting what Roey is saying here. And I think coming to the gap that we're talking about, academia and the business world, I think in the academia, you have sort of the time available to sort of think the complex thoughts in this. In the industry, it can sometimes, we're so focused on the bottom line, we're so focused on creating a revenue, so therefore it's sort of it has to be a quick fix sometimes, and therefore we do not think carefully about implementing the right solutions and taking the time, because it is rather time consuming and complex in doing so. And I think we perhaps, and I think now I'm talking about the shipping industry, I guess it also same logic might appear in other industries as well. We perhaps need to train more. We need to practice more, setting things in motion. I mean, in the military, for instance, you do spend a lot of time on practicing, doing various scenario thinking and scenario analysis in the same way that you do with your models. Perhaps the industry could learn from that. But sorry, Rob, what was the question?
Christian, this is great. Please, it's great to answer each other's questions. I love it. Please continue with this. I was asking the question, as Roey mentioned, building these big complex systems, are we building giant monoliths like the pyramids of Giza, or is there some alternative thing that we're building?
Yeah, that's actually another element to this. I think the decision makers that we're seeing right now in the industry, at least in the shipping industry, are if I may put it, that's old farts, and the technology here is still relatively new, despite you having worked with it for some time. And I think we will see more and more people moving up in senior positions that are accustomed to AI, that understands the terminology and understands how to apply it, and understands, and that's really the key element here, understands the value of it. Because I don't think, and I don't know whether it's you, Rob, or the industry per se, perhaps sometimes you're not able to convey the real true value because it becomes so complex in explaining, and there's not one model that fits all. So therefore you need to make your own learnings, you need to make your own sort of gain your own experience in this. And I think that's really the one of the obstacles, at least.
Thanks, Christian. And Gemma, same question about robustness and systems design. Are we talking about the one giant system to fix all problems here, or are we talking about something else?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I very much believe in chunking things, so cutting processes up and look where data and data systems can help you to speed up. In the end, if you do that right, then you create all kind of small pockets where you are already using data and insights in a way mature level. And when you do that right, you can string those together. And that's where robustness comes in. So first you start with the parts in the process, your business process or your organizational process, where you need innovation or acceleration the most. And in our business, that is where the customer has either experienced the highest added value or experiences the highest nuisance. So you want to get rid of that. And if you do that, you kind of create pearls, and you create a pearl necklace by stringing it together. So first you create a lot of pearls and then you string it, and robustness in the data system, maybe also what Roey was talking about, is stringing those together and creating a whole system out of it instead of only the separate pearls. And I very much agreed with Richie, what you mentioned regarding the holistic view and the integral approach on using data, because what I see in my business or my area of business is that there are a lot of standalone initiatives, and they are great, but they are still standalone until they are kind of being looked at either holistically or being connected by using this string. So and that's something that if we make a link to healthcare, that healthcare needs to do as well. So especially kind of looking integral to the whole process and looking from a holistic view, what is our service and how do we provide it, and how do we not only give standalone expertise or advice or service products, but the whole, let's say, the whole experience, how to make that as best as possible for a patient. That when the healthcare will have that in mind, we will all be making a huge step.
Thanks, Gemma. Of course, Richie, you mentioned by name there. I know that that'll spark off some thought processes too, but apparently we're not talking about robustness in terms of giant monolithic systems. I know, Richie, that's a particular place in the world that you also like to avoid, building targeted systems for targeted reasons. We tell us a little bit about what you do there. Also, we have a question from the chat that I think it fits in nicely at the same time, which is robustness seems to imply control and subsequent action. Is it that a controlling system needs to be smarter than the system it controls? Richie.
Okay, so I think there was 4 questions there. So I'll just pick my way through them as best I can. I wanted to go back to Roey's point on productionizing ML systems. I think he's spot on. I think this is a very interesting area. I was listening to a podcast yesterday, even on this topic, and you know, one of the things that we see a lot of is when we're articulating to executives how our platform supports, we're effectively a schemaless automation platform. So we show up use case agnostic, and we can do whatever we want to help that customer. So maybe to jump ahead to one answer, what you're trying to achieve through that is the flexibility by having loosely coupled systems, so that as things change, you can hot swap or pull bits out and replace them, and you get away from monolith systems that are trying to define everything in one place, because that holds the business back. A great example there would be, you know, in C2C, particularly retail is a great example, but also banking is another one, and fintech. You know, this pace of innovation that you would experience as a consuming banking customer, actually across a lot of areas of banking and finance, for years was always felt moribund, paper-based, very slow, and the systems underpinning those were massive mainframe type on platform systems. Obviously, one thing we haven't mentioned here is the proliferation of cloud, and how cloud has forced rethinking of processes, rethinking of customer experience, rethinking of customer success, and all of those things have come together to actually enable AI and machine learning use cases to be more viable. So if we're doing a voice processing thing in real time for a call center in claims, you know, being able to spin those GPUs up on the AWS environment that customer has is huge, and that's a massively big beneficial step in part of it. Going back to the robustness point, I think that because we're use case agnostic when we go into a customer, and because we spend a lot of time with the business side trying to understand what's going on, I think you do get to a better place. Longer term, how that's going to evolve, I think the one point we haven't hit on here is that a lot of internal data science groups and data science capabilities are doing great research or collaborating with academics to come up with algorithms that are quite closely tailored to their business. and productionizing those algorithms are extremely hard, because within the IT frameworks and partnerships that they have inside their organizations, there isn't that data engineering, productionization of machine learning capabilities that exist. A lot of focus over the last 5 years was on platforms, data science platforms that enabled model selection to be a lot easier. And there's some great companies out there that come with 10,000 AI models or machine learning models, and you can kind of hot swap and change between them. What's not really solved yet is the data pipelines that basically Gemma was defining, this chaining of ideas across a set of algorithms to a set of processes, a set of business rules, and a set of consumers. And that's really where the intelligent automation space is. So it's a roundabout way of saying that actually, when you talk about automation to customers in our context, we don't really sell AI to them. We sell an automation solution that may require AI. And so then try to finally address Tim's question on, does the robustness address the controller or the subsequent action? So it's slightly, I think the word that's missing here is where the process lies, because the business process is at the heart of all of this, and the system should be supporting the process, and the system should be at some level trying to codify that process. If you don't sit down with a well-defined business process and with what the customer's trying to achieve, like smoother checkout. So we talked to Walmart, and we spoke to them this time last year about how they were testing their systems for 10,000 transactions a second to do the checkout that they need to do to meet that scale. That's because the process is well-defined and the system is then optimized, maximum optimized at that kind of scale to be performant. I think too many people throw out the painful process optimization piece and get straight into the system design. So that was a rambling answer, but hopefully I addressed a bit of all of your questions.
No, it's really good. It also touches quite a bit on something Christian was mentioning about this what if scenario planning. I mean, being robust is about, I wouldn't say expecting the unexpected, but imagining a world where your assumptions don't quite hold, and what would that mean for what you're doing. And Christian said, well, why don't we do this kind of what if scenario planning, testing, drills, things like that in the rest of the world that happens in the military. Also, I'd like to support what Christian says there, that it also happens across in academia on the large scale experiments. So things like the Large Hadron Collider, things like this. That's a giant. The robustness there is all about seeing the world differently and thinking, okay, what happens if this piece of physics isn't working or this piece of equipment isn't working? What is the outcome going to be? What's the outcome going to be there? And in that, we have thousands of people per experiment working all year round, just doing this what if testing on various things. What if that piece of equipment doesn't work? What if this other piece doesn't work? And of course, that's academia. One place where robustness academia is something to aspire to, but is that even possible in the real world? What type of what if scenario planning should we be doing? I think Richie was looking forward to answering this a bit.
Well, I was just in my mind as you were saying, I think the downside of getting it wrong in the collider is a black hole that sucks us all into infinity. So I think that's right and proper that there's 10,000 people looking after that. I think if you're having a commercially minded conversation with a large insurance company, you say, look, I just need 6 months and 50 people to test this system. That's going to be met with a high degree of skepticism and challenge in terms of, can we, how does the commercials of that stack up, and how do we get there? So I think it's a balance you've got to strike between getting to the 80% solution, which expands the ability of that customer, or whether the use cases are, like Roey pointed out, it's got to be 99% accurate, or it's a system that builds around it where you've got rules and ways out, and it's not purely reliant on the algorithm. So I think that's a really fascinating debate, and it really depends on the maturity of the organization that's implementing the AI, the partners that are working with them, both from a software vendor, but also from a consulting perspective, to bring them on that journey and not put them in a place where they're trying to do something that is cutting, bleeding edge, where they're maybe not ready for it, their processes aren't ready for it, or it's the risks are there to be seen. That would be my initial thought on that.
And Roey, I know that your headspace also sits a lot in this what if scenario planning. What are the tools, what are the techniques, what are the things that we apply in AI here to actually check that we've got something robust in the end?
So that's a very open questions, but on a nutshell, I think that uncertainty estimation is probably one of the smartest and strongest tool I can advise on. Think about a model or a technique. For those of you who are not familiar with the concept, a model or technique that can predict if your model can predict well. Basically assessing the uncertainty or the confidence level for each prediction. So that's on the prediction side. And a second mechanism that is very nice is the out of distribution detection. So let's assume we collected a 10,000 images training set. That training set compose a distribution. Can we say when something is out of this distribution? And if it's out of this distribution, it should not be automatically processed by the model. A basic example is a classifier that's classified dog or cat images, and you just suddenly got an image of a giraffe. What will the model do? Well, it will predict that it's a dog or a cat, and usually with high confidence as well, and high probability if you look at the softmax activations. But what out of distribution models do, they will tell you, wait. This is out of the distribution, and therefore it should pass to a human or not be trusted as a valid example. So these two mechanisms protect the basic model from the data stream side and from the prediction side. And then you have monitoring tools that you want to detect data drift and shifting in the data. And you have feedback loop that can re-enhance the model over time, adapting to changes. You want to combine decision point where you can combine business rules to minimize the complexity as much as possible with handcrafted ideas that the business is using. For example, if we go to a defect detection in manufacturing, you want to incorporate an idea that defects smaller than 1 centimeter are non-defect, right? How you combine that information with AI. And of course, where you have the entire world of robust algorithms, how to make sure that you are generalized well to the training set and to what you see in production. So this is few examples. I can continue all day, but there are many mechanisms. But
I think it's really great. What's really great today is that we're touching on all these topics that are way bigger. Just before we started the call, Richie said, Rob, any of these questions I could write a PhD thesis on. And I'd say that would be great. You'd be the only 10-person PhD thesis person that I know. I think I know someone with 3.
One could write a PhD, not me. I don't have a PhD.
But I'd like to shift our minds to another particular thing that's close to my heart at the moment, and that's data in healthcare. As a patient in and out of various different parts of healthcare myself at the moment, I'm just shocked by how healthcare appears to be about 20 years behind where we are in retail and elsewhere in the world. One of the common answers, it's a very strange one, when I ask about why isn't healthcare up to date on this, is people argue that that medicine as a field changes too quickly and is too complex for any algorithm to keep up. And so my question to this panel is, do you agree with that? And I'll ask that question first to Gemma.
Well, it's a very nice thesis. No, of course I do not agree. And that's, but also not because of the direction of the argumentation. The direction of the argumentation is inside out, we this or we that or and I think within various other sectors, for example, retail or food service, we have been able to put that direction, to reverse that direction, and not to say, is this possible, is this not possible, is just to say, what kind of service or what kind of product are we delivering? What are we doing? Where is our added value? And if you kind of start from the outside in, and you are able to pinpoint your added value, your kind of raison d'être, towards the people you're servicing in healthcare, that would be patients or clients who are not in the health system yet, even better, then it should start from there. Kind of, what are their needs? What are their longings? When do they feel comfortable? When are they really helped, and whatever. And then in every case, it is possible to make a data-driven solution, independent of complexity and independent of dynamics, internal dynamics. I'm convinced of that.
And if you had to give that initial kick up the backside to healthcare and shove them in a particular direction now to make those first steps, what do you think those first steps should be, Gemma? What should they borrow the most from retail?
Well, it's this outside in. So stop thinking about yourself and start thinking about the people you're servicing. And we made just before we had a really nice conversation about, for example, to food service. When you come, the food service is all about hospitality, by the way, as well as healthcare. And one of the things, central ideas of hospitality is kind of to know what your guest or your customer, your client is looking for, and to be interested. And so just imagine that you go to a restaurant, and while sitting down, the waiter tells you, "Oh, nice to see you tonight, mister. And do you have any allergies, for example? Do you have any allergies?" "Yeah, well, yes, I do have an allergy. I have an allergy for sugar, for example, for sugar and for nuts and seeds." Okay. So very nice. You get a starter, and then the first course comes, and then a new waiter comes. "So nice to see you this afternoon. Can I ask you, do you have an allergy?" So we're able to, well, I kind of just told you. Oh, I have sugar and nuts, and then and so on and so on. Just imagine that 4 times a night during your whole course, you will be asked the same question. It's unthinkable. We will get annoyed to the max, and we wouldn't allow for it. We start tweeting and whatever social media we use to give lousy rates to the restaurant. But we do accept this from within healthcare. We accept it within the medical system, that every doctor is asking you the same questions, that they are not aligned with each other, they are not involved with each other. It's not that they're not interested, it's just that nobody is really looking at the whole process from a patient perspective. So that would be my advice to healthcare, and also to ourselves to stop accepting this. Maybe the change comes from us.
Yeah, I think so. I refuse. I'm certainly trying my best to be the first person saying no inside the hospitals I go to. But bouncing it across to Christian. Christian, you stand on top of giant global systems networks of sourcing and syncs of various different things across different areas of the globe, and that's an incredibly complex system. It really is. So do you agree or disagree with the idea that that algorithms can't possibly keep up? And what do you think healthcare needs from learning from shipping?
It's difficult, I think, to be taking sort of the dynamics from one industry and try to apply it to another one. What I can say is, I think Gemma is absolutely right in the sense that they need to adopt some sort of outside-in perspective on things, and instead of looking from the inside out, and I don't know whether it's because we are in my industry and in retail as well, we're talking about clients, and clients we want to cater for. Clients is sort of are paying us money and therefore per definition treated well. Whereas once you're a patient, it's sort of a different logic that applies in that perspective. So it would be nice if you could perhaps adopt, not necessarily from the shipping industry, but especially from the retail and from the tourism, etc., a mindset of treating people nice and say, well, perhaps they're not paying us directly, but we want to make sure that we make some processes so next time that we have happy, not necessarily recurring patients, but happy patients as we go along. I think that's really what they should be centered around. And then secondly, I don't know whether there's an issue around the GDPR regulation that makes it more difficult for the healthcare industry. I don't know whether that's one of the issues. What I can say, in Denmark at least, back in the 60s, we were talking about that now we would be ready for the electronic document handling for all patients. And now 2020, 60 years later, we're still not, or 50 years later, we're still not there, but the Danish healthcare are trying. Yeah, I don't know. It's difficult to be an expert on this field, Rob.
Of course, in the UK and Netherlands, we aspire to be Danish and/or Estonian in our healthcare. It'd be great to move there. I know that Roey, we've had this conversation before. That you have a particular love-hate relationship with AI in healthcare, Roey. We don't have a huge amount of time, but if you could tell us what fires that love-hate relationship as well, and what's going wrong? Where should we rethink things?
I think, the general topic of healthcare is super important, right? And if you look economic-wise, 18% of the US economic is healthcare. So it's definitely an area that investing in AI is worthy and valuable for the humankind, if you want. There was an interesting article published on New York Times over the weekend about progress in finding a vaccine with AI or molecular or something like that that can fight COVID. My personal background, so I came from biomedical engineering, bachelor and master's degrees, focusing on medical imaging. And what I figure out is that the true innovation in AI comes from general applications. And with time, it's propagate, and it takes a lot of time into applications like healthcare. And as a researcher, I want to be in an innovation environment, bringing new ideas, creating new concepts. And that's my personal story with healthcare.
But if I combine that a little bit with what Christian and Gemma were saying, then really I think it's safe to say that it's not about that cutting edge, bleeding edge image recognition, TensorFlow, something in healthcare. It's about those basics of what allergies do you have. Let's make sure every hospital knows you're allergic to penicillin without having to check if you're wearing a bracelet or something already. And we are trying to innovate healthcare, but we're not trying to change. We don't need to change AI to do that. Is what you're saying. AI is already advanced enough. Let's apply something that we already know how to do to change things already not working. Thanks, Roey. And then Richie, you and I don't think we've talked about the idea of healthcare and systems in healthcare. Of course, you're in the UK. It's a very interesting landscape in terms of healthcare. What are your thoughts? How should they push forward?
Well, I think just like in retail, what we've seen this year is a massive disruptive force, which is going to force healthcare to change. And I think that's the catalyst that maybe everyone's been waiting for. I don't think it's a positive thing that's happened, but I think it's going to hopefully be positively capitalized upon, because what you're seeing here in the UK, at least, is a lot of the cancer screening and checkups around other sorts of non-COVID related illnesses that are long running have been postponed or cancelled indefinitely while COVID treatment is ongoing. that's going to facilitate a whole new range of use cases and problems that need to be addressed in either remote medicine or other approaches. And it, as you say, the use cases aren't actually that complicated from an AI perspective, but it's about a willingness to disrupt the processes within these organizations and these different medical systems to allow this kind of disruption to happen. So I think there is a huge opportunity that will emerge. I think there are a bit like in the fintech world and the disruption of the retail banking space. I think something similar will start to happen. You have it here where there is a video GP service, a video doctor service that's really been hugely successful through this. But I've seen a lot of other GP surgeries who are not part of that have their own remote video services now starting to spin up. And so that catalyst for change has occurred. It's now going to be expected that you can have a video call with your doctor as opposed to having to go to surgery each time. And I think those grassroots changes will percolate up to more and more of the core systems and processes within organizations. And that will then change the shape of the facilities that are needed. And then that will, because a lot of the money that's spent in this healthcare space is the physical infrastructure, the buildings, so it's going to be interesting to see how it actually, the bullwhip effect, if you think about it from supply chain, the bullwhip effect of COVID will actually ripple through all of healthcare and change how it's all going to change. So the next 10 years in that is going to be fascinating, I think.
I think that's a lovely place on which to round off today. Thanks very much, Richie. Now, of course, we've touched on so many topics today. Definitely not enough time to round off each of them. I think we could have a several week-long seminar series. If you'd like that, please give your answers in the chat, and we'll come back to you. And we're now approaching the end of 2020, and everyone's breathing a collective sigh of relief. Only a few weeks left to go. What can possibly go wrong? Touch wood. Let's hope we make it to the next few weeks. And we've exhausted our time for the day. So I'd like to close by thanking our panelists for giving their time today and their open insight into this complex and inspiring topic. It's been an absolute pleasure to have this opportunity to speak with you all today. Thanks also to our associates in organising this series, Infomet BV, MACT and AltViz. This closes out our last seminar for 2020. As we turn our minds to 2021, please let us know over LinkedIn or mail or however you want if there's any topics you'd like us to tackle together in the next series in 2021. And follow us on LinkedIn to get the memo when the new sign-up links are issued. I look forward to you joining us with a new expert panel in 2021. Finally, thanks to the audience. Thanks to everyone for joining us today. I hope this has inspired you to ask bigger questions and work towards a beautiful and robust data-driven future. Hope to see you all again next time. Goodbye for now.